Wake that ass up early in the morning. The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest on the line, Tricia Clarke-Stone. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
I am fascinated. And first of all, before we even get started, how are you doing and how's the family?
Good, all good. And I actually just moved to LA. So this New Yorker just went west.
Wow. How was that change?
And why?
Well, I've been bi-coastal for the last 3 years, but being cooped up in New York in my apartment just kind of pushed me over. And I got to a point where I was like, why am I living in these confines when I have a bigger place in LA? So right when I felt comfortable enough to get on a plane and fly, I went to LA, got, experience having more space, and came back to New York, packed up my stuff, and now I'm here full time, 100%.
And you're originally what part of New York are you originally from?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, okay.
That's where I am. Listen, I want to ask you this because they're having this whole panel at Soho House about whether New York is dead or New York is dying. What are your thoughts on that?
I think New York will always be great. I just think a part of our soul is lost right now, but I think we'll get it back. It's almost reminiscent of 9/11, right? So, but we're so resilient. So I think we'll get it back. It's just a bit on pause right now.
See, the difference is with 9/11, people were scared, but they weren't leaving New York like this. Now it's like, I can't live in this apartment because at least during 9/11, you can still go outside, but
that's
now,
true.
Like you can't go to a restaurant. They're opening that on the 30th. There's so many things that people can't do. People are leaving New York, even to go to Long Island or just to go to Jersey or go to upstate because they want things to do. And I honestly don't see people moving back like that. Like the rent is too expensive. You don't really get much for the rent. So until they start lowering those prices, I think it's a good thing for New York.
You know what? I think it's a good thing for New York because today in New York, it was either really rich people or really poor people that made up New York, right? So the middle class was kind of being bumped out of New York. So now that rent is going down in New York, I think it opens up an opportunity for people to come back to New York, and it's just a longer tail, right? So I think there's like a little bit of a white space now, but it will take a few years for New York to get back to where it was. But to your point, Envy, we're spending so much time in our home now when we want our space. New York has always been a place where you're outside and you're experiencing the city.
Right.
Well, let's get into your show now that's on Discovery, I Quit. And I am fascinated by this show because I'm always interested in starting new businesses. Right now, during this time, I've started like several new businesses. And so watching that show, first of all, hopefully one day I'm going to be on there, okay, with one of them. But I'm opening a store in Detroit. I also have a coffee company that I just launched called Coffee Unites People. I have my pressed juice business coming back that we actually had to go back and regroup, and that's coming back in 2 weeks. And so watching this show really helps me because it's interesting to me to see the differences of how people start businesses. Sometimes you want to start a business with your best friends, but that can really affect a relationship. And I know you've had, obviously because you are one of the judges on the show, or what do you call it? It's not necessarily a judge, but one of the
mentor. One of the mentors on the show. Yeah.
Because you're one of the mentors on the show, you have your own experience. So even though you've been on the Breakfast Club before for your book, Double Down, let's talk about your experience and what makes you qualified to help out these people who are starting businesses.
So I think to your point, the show's amazing because it gives you a real snapshot of true entrepreneurship. I think today there are so many people that you see the headlines, the cover of Fast Company, of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. So you see the big wins and the big losses, but you really don't get to see often the story behind the story, or the story of the humans behind the big headlines or behind the businesses. And I think I Quit gives you that. It gives you the story behind the entrepreneur, and it really gives you the real behind the businesses. So you get a sense of the grit, the passion, the hard work, the sacrifice, all of the elements that really gets that you have to go through and what it takes to really start a business, and from A to Z. The reason why I was really drawn to the show was because when I became an entrepreneur, if I didn't have the mentors that I had, it would have been a really rough road, because leaping into entrepreneurship, there's no roadmap or blueprint. There is, you jump into the unknown. And I almost look at mentorship as you have this guide, or it's almost like Waze with context, right? You have someone that's guiding you and helping you along the way. So for me, when I got the call from the producers of the show, it was actually when my twin sister and I, we were writing Double Down. And I looked at it as a sign, because the reason why we wrote Double Down was to help democratize success and entrepreneurship for people who look like us. So me saying yes to the show helped me scale the mentorship that I wanted to do, and to really give people the opportunity that I had, to really help them and guide them along their journey to entrepreneurship.
I wanted to ask, a lot of people always say when it comes to entrepreneurship that they got to jump out there and do it. I'm not a firm believer in that. I'm a firm believer in staying the course and do things on the side, meaning I'm gonna stay with my Breakfast Club job, but I have so many other different businesses, like this is my comfortability, my way that I can invest more and spread, but I still have all these businesses. What are your thoughts on that? Because a lot of times people say, well, if you have a job, you're not really an entrepreneur, or you're not a boss. What do you think?
I think it also probably depends on what your job is and what your aspirations are. Because I would think the Breakfast Club is a great platform to promote, but some people might not, their job might not correlate or link into what it is that they're doing, right, Tricia?
Yeah, 100%. I think it depends on what your job is and what your North Star is, right? Like what you're really looking to achieve. I'm a big believer in side hustles, right? So it depends on, like I said, what your long game is. So in terms of figuring out where you want to go and what you want to achieve, right? So in terms of figuring out where you want to go, it's, if you know that this is your main, 100% focus, but you want to start dabbling into other areas, then I think you keep your day job, but you start, trying your different side hustles. I think the key is figuring out, knowing when to then double down on those side hustles.
Right.
And I think that's when you start to really figure out the magic, and when to start doubling down on those side hustles, when you start to gain a reputation for those side hustles, when people start to recognize, oh, he's doing his thing, let me go to Envy for that. And when you start to make real progress in that space and profit, when people start saying, yes, I will pay you for that thing. And when that business starts to scale, then I think you become more comfortable in that space. And I think that's for your personality type, right? So when you start feeling a little bit more comfortable, you're willing to take more of that leap. I like to double down quicker, because to me, it's like big risk, big reward. So I like to jump in, but I like to learn before I leap. So I do my due diligence, then I jump all in so that I can basically scale more quickly.
Yeah, because there's some people who have day jobs where they might be working really long hours, but not making a lot of money. And it might not have anything to do with what their passion is. And at that point, then maybe they have a decision to make where they're like, okay, I'm working 10-hour days. I can't even concentrate on my side hustle, and I'm not even really making that much money. So
right. And two, you really can't formulate the true business that you want to build. So when you're just dipping your toe in, you can't build the true business that you want, that is sustainable and that can really help you live the lifestyle that you want. So sometimes you do have to make that decision to say, am I going to go all in? And I think too, especially if you're trying to build a business, you want to go all in because you want to build out that infrastructure so that can become your day job. So you move away from the job that's not fulfilling you and giving you what you need.
Now, I want to talk about some of the guests that you actually have, some of the entrepreneurs on I Quit. And I saw you had women, they're best friends, and they started a wine company, because Black women are definitely underrepresented when it comes to that business in particular. So I wanted to know what your thoughts were on their business.
I loved the ladies of Ezra because I love businesses that challenge the status quo. And that's exactly what they were doing. You know, they went in, they saw a white space and they said, I'm going to go in and disrupt a male white dominated industry and go in and say, all right, we're three Black women best friends. We think that there's an opportunity for us to come in and shake up this industry. The thing that I cautioned them on was when you're best friends, there's a friend dynamic when you're going into business that you have to kind of readjust and figure out what that new framework is going to be. And my big thing with them was you need to establish roles and responsibilities. Who's doing what, and really figure out your superpower stack. What do each of you do really well? And what role are you going to play, and who's going to be responsible for what? And then the other thing is making sure that you're aligned on the vision and what your mission is to really make sure that this business is going to be a success. Because if you're not aligned on that vision, then you have three visions and everyone's kind of doing their own thing.
Right. Now you also talk about mentors, and you talk about mentors a lot. How did you get your mentors? You know, a lot of people, they say, you know, I would love a mentor, or where, you know, can you be my mentor? Or, you know, how do you get your mentors? How do you get in those relationships?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in value propositions and basically meeting people and giving value even to people that you think you need to get something from. So even now, right, when I meet young people and they're like, I'd really love for you to be my mentor, I look at youth as a superpower, because as I get older, right, I can learn from people that are younger than me because they know trends. They're using TikTok, obviously more than I'm using TikTok. So they have insights that I don't have. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big believer in you have something that I can learn from. So there's a value exchange, I think, when you look at mentorship. And I think there's a two-way street there that I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, doesn't really look at it in that way. They kind of have their eyes set on, hey, I aspire to be in a role that you have, and I'd love for you to teach me something. Where I think the younger generation needs to say, hey, I think I have something that I can teach you too, and here's what it is. And I think that's when you can really align and get more mentors to basically come to the table. So you almost have this board of advisors that can help you along that journey.
Gotcha.
Now, how do you stand out in a space where, say, one of the people on the show had a barbecue sauce, right? And there's 1,000 barbecue sauces out on the market for us to choose from. And so what are some things that a person can do? Because sometimes you're not reinventing or inventing something that never existed. You are actually moving into a space where you're trying to be the best, or you're trying to stand out, or you're trying to use your marketing to make sure that people are aware of your product. So what would you recommend to somebody that's like, okay, I want to come out with this product. It is oversaturated in the marketplace with this product, but I want to make sure that mine is different.
I'm a big believer in leveraging storytelling and engagement and innovation, right? So to me, it's about connection. And I lean heavily into the Maya Angelou quote, and I'm going to bastardize it a little bit, but people will forget what you did and what you said, but people will never forget the way you made them feel, right? So to me, it's about connection and that feeling. And oftentimes the way into that is storytelling. And I think, as you guys will see on the show, there are entrepreneurs that lean into driving that connection by really brand building and creating content and utilizing social media and telling their brand story to really drive those connections with consumers, because content drives commerce, and really creating those points of differentiation to building their brand. Because one thing you guys will see on the show too, that I think oftentimes entrepreneurs get confused by, is there's a difference between building a brand, a product, and a business. Mm-hmm. And it's hard on the onset to do all three at the same time when you don't know, oftentimes you don't know how to do any of those things at the beginning. So I think, you need to parse those things and really figure out, steps at a time, how you're doing that. But to get back to your point, to me, it's storytelling has always been my way of figuring out how to do that from an engagement and connection standpoint.
And how do you balance emotional and what's right? And the reason I ask that is because sometimes you invest in a business and you're emotionally invested in this business and you should have tapped out maybe a couple of months ago. But there's also, you could be so emotionally connected that, you could make it jump over that necessary step that most people would let go a long time ago. So how do you get to that position? How do you balance that out?
Yeah. So the emotion piece is important because you have that passion and it allows you to kind of stay in the game, right? Mm-hmm. I think two things, it's a good barometer and a test and a compass. First, a balance sheet don't lie. So you have to make sure that you look to make sure where you are with your numbers. And if you're not getting to a level of profitability, you need to start questioning that and seeing where you are with your margins. The other thing is user testing. Also, your consumers don't lie. You need to make sure that you're utilizing data and analyzing that and seeing what your consumers are saying and how they're feeling about your product. And then the other thing is I always think about is I always ask myself, what's happening now? What's happening, it's almost like, what do I think is happening now? What's happening tomorrow? And what hasn't been done before? And that's kind of the context that I play in, and kind of the rubrics that I play with in those instances.
Gotcha.
What are your thoughts on investing in your own business and getting investors, right? I think when I first started, I always felt like, okay, I'm just going to use my own money. I don't want to get investors. I don't want to give away control percentages. But now I'm realizing how much better it is sometimes to use other people's money. So what are your thoughts on that?
So everyone says you shouldn't use your own money. And I'm a believer in that too, but I'm also a big believer in bootstrapping. So then you can keep as much equity as possible, so that you can control your business and the vision of what you want the business to be. When I started my business, I got investment. But there was a point where I needed to get more money into the business and I didn't want to give up more equity. So I put an infusion of my own cash into the business because I didn't want to give up more equity. And it worked out, but it could have gone into the other direction where I lost my own cash. But my advice to people is to try to bootstrap first in the beginning until you prove out what your business is, until you get to a place where you've proven out your business model and you have a revenue stream so that if you do want to get investment, you at least come from a place of power where you have an established kind of revenue stream and a business, so you have a good valuation that you're setting forth.
Do you think you could work with somebody that you don't get along with, right? Let's just say you decide to partner with someone and then everything seems like it'll be okay. Then you start working together and it goes completely left. But the business is a great idea. You just don't enjoy the partnership.
That would be hard because I think business, especially starting a new business, it's extremely difficult. Entrepreneurship is the most rewarding and exhilarating, but it's also one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. And just when you think you're hitting a stride, it takes a turn. So my advice would be you need to get along with your co-founder or your business partners. That's like 101, because if you don't get along with them, to me, that's like a disaster waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I look forward to checking out I Quit. Now, when is it on? When can I see it now, you?
It's on Discovery Saturdays at 10. And, you guys have to tune in to see who gets 100K that we're actually going to infuse 100K into one of the entrepreneurs' businesses.
How much equity do you get for giving that 100K?
No equity, guys. We're just giving it to them to help them out.
And
Well,
I see you have the Shopify COO. Harley's on that show also. Shopify is an amazing tool for entrepreneurs as well. So, online business, if you can take your business online, especially during this pandemic, I think people learned a lot about having to pivot from what their company was doing and being able to navigate in this world right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Shopify is like a superpower if you're an entrepreneur. It gives you control of your business. Harley was a great mentor, and then also Debbie was one of the mentors on the show. So it was amazing having them with me, with the other to be on the panel helping out the entrepreneurs.
All right. Well, Tricia Clarke-Stone, thank you for checking in. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
All right.
I quit.